Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Thursday, June 26, 2025. I, of course, am here to talk about what's going on with the markets, your daily mortgage rate update. Today, we're going to be talking about jobless claims that came in this morning and what they mean for rates, not only today, but as we start moving forward. We're also going to talk about what's going on in the housing market. Definitely some things we need to be. I'm going to keep continuing to beat the drum on. We're going to keep talking about. We're going to talk about the truth about the Fed and mortgage rates, because Powell is more famous than Sydney Sweeney these days. And I kind of laugh. Now, I would love to get Siegel on here so we could argue. He is a big Powell hater. I'm a big Powell fanboy. But anyway, good morning, y'all. Hope you are having a fantastic day. Remember, you can join me live each and every weekday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, as we do the show. So many of you that are here. Giddy up, Mr. Randy Tico. Good morning, Megan and Mike, Tim, Kyle, Amy. Great to have all of you here. Thank you so much for joining. If you are watching this morning, make sure you say good morning. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and give us hashtag replay in the comments. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Remember, your comments help us with growth, so always appreciate you doing that. If you'd like a quick reminder that I'm going live, it's hmmr.io/reminder, or use this cool QR code right here. You can even take a screenshot, go back to your photos, and that QR code will work. So, all right, my friends, let's go ahead. Let's jump in and get started, going all the good stuff here. So we're going to talk about first what happened yesterday. Quick recap, what happened yesterday after the show. So you can see, I'm even going to zoom in on this for a minute. Hold on a second. Let's see here. And we'll zoom in here. So you can see yesterday around 10 a.m. right about here is where we were at. And let me see. There we go. So right here around 10 a.m., mortgage-backed securities were a hair below 99.50, 55, right around in that range here. You can see they moved up during the day through the afternoon. And anytime you see this direction improvement, we were negative on the day here. Give us a little frowny face, right? We were negative on the day here. We ended the day positive. Not enough that we saw any reprices, though. Let me know in the comments if you saw any reprices better. I'm curious about that. There were very, very few yesterday, even though we did see a swing, pretty significant swing. I mean, mortgage bonds came out, pricing was generally around 99.50 to 55, and we got up to 99.70. So that's a 15 basis point swing on the day. And, but really just lenders, not really doing much with that. Now today, rate sheets are going to be better. So you're going to see that for a couple of reasons. Number one, rate sheets are going to be better when you see that we didn't get reprices better. Pricing came out right around that 99.50-ish mark here, 99.55 even, and right now we're at 99.81. So we're up about 30 basis points on the day. When you're up about 30 bips, you're not really going to see rates themselves improve, but you're going to see better pricing. So we're definitely going to see some better pricing this morning. In fact, if we want to go ahead and take a look using Mortgage News Daily as a reference point, you will see that we are seeing some of the best rates and pricing that we've seen in over a month. You don't see any 6.7 handle anywhere in this column. As we go down, there is no 6.7s. And if we actually use the little chart here, let's go ahead and flip this off. Let's bring this down to where we can actually see what's going on this year. So you take a look here. The last time we were down this low was pre-tariff. Right. So remember, there was all the tariff nonsense right here, April 2nd. We saw some initially really good reaction right here, which was obviously, if we draw a line, you'll see where we are right here. That brought rates a little bit better rates and pricing right here. But then immediately we came up and we were at some of the worst levels. In fact, here you are, 7.07. Before that, though, take a look at this stretch right here. We are going back into that range, and we could be improving past that range. All right, so that's actually a very good thing. Reprice risk on the day today is low. Right now, mortgage bonds are up about 13 basis points to start the day. Likely that they will continue. Now, what's giving us a bit of a boost? Let's go ahead and take a look at all this morning. And that brings us to talk about some of those jobless claims and some of that stuff. So, first things first, you will see that jobless claims jump the highest since November of 21. Remember, anything in 2021 was during COVID, and those numbers were totally screwed up and skewed. Now, as long as it's below 300,000, it's still considered a strong labor market, believe it or not. We've been, pre-COVID, we were below 300,000 for years. So, but let's see, reoccurring applications for U.S. unemployment benefits rose to the highest since November 2021. So what they're talking about here is, notice they're talking about recurring. So that's continued claims. All right. So continuing claims, a proxy for the number of people receiving benefits, increased to 1.97. And that's kind of more telling because it's the number of people that continue to remain on unemployment on the unemployment rolls. Okay. Initial claims, though, 236,000. So they actually, initial claims were a little bit lower. That's why you wouldn't see, again, what gets the headline is that the recurring claims jumped to the highest level. They don't want to talk about the fact that initial claims decreased and that it was lower than economists anticipated. Now, the 4-week moving average also dipped. So for every time you get one crack in the labor market, there's another one that shows strength right here. And that brings us to the next topic, which is the Fed and Powell. So there's a lot of conversation here about Powell and his replacement, and that Trump, as it says here, Trump is considering naming his successor. Let's talk about this. So first and foremost, Siegel, are you on yet? When it comes to Powell, there's so many people that love to give this guy a hard time. Now, there's a few things that you need to know about the Fed. So number one, we're going to actually talk about Powell specifically. Number one, Powell's term isn't up until 2028. That's how long he will be a member of the Fed unless he were to resign, which is possible. He will be Fed chair until 2026, May of 2026. Normally, what would happen is the president would announce his pick for the next Fed chair with a few months before. Let's call it 3, maybe 4 months before. That would put us at, March, February, right? So that way there's a transition period. What they're talking about here is what they call a shadow Fed. It's the idea that if Powell were to name his successor early, that successor would be able to influence based on their philosophies coming in. Now, a lot of people are banging up on the Fed and the housing market specifically. And in fact, I recorded a clip. I can't play it here, but I recorded a clip of Powell's testimony where he talks about the housing market and the labor market. And I want to kind of show something out to you guys, right? So as we take a look here and kind of go over this stuff, first, let's look at expectations for Fed rate cuts. Now, if we click compare, just a few weeks ago, the expectation for a Fed rate cut in July was basically non-existent, right? It was almost 90% expectation that there would not be a cut. And you could see that right here to stay at 4.25. That's the range that we're in right now. And then here is the idea that we'd get a rate cut. You'll notice a week ago that was much lower. Now it's much higher. This could continue to improve. Now, it's important to recognize markets, specifically the housing market, mortgage-backed securities, mortgage bonds, they are already pricing in the idea that we're going to see 2 Fed rate cuts this year. That's already being priced in. When you look at your rate sheets, that's already being priced into these rate sheets, the idea that we're going to see Fed rate cuts. Now, if they think that that cut is going to come in July, we could see a little bit of improvement because it'll come early, but the expectations are that we'll have that cut by September. So if you take a look here, the expectation that we would see rates stay the same in September, less than 10%. There's a 68% expectation that rates will see one cut, and there's even a 25%, give or take, expectation that we'll see two cuts by then. Okay. And this is what markets are currently pricing in. Now, Powell is getting a lot of pressure, and there's this talk that, housing is a big deal. Now, this is Danielle DiMartino Booth, a very, very smart woman. Definitely a lot. Every time I read her stuff, I got to read it twice to really go in. So I took a page from Siegel and I put her stuff into Chat GPT and told it, hey, give this to me in plain English and summarize. And basically what her commentary about today was about new home sales. Now, remember, there's existing home sales and there's new home sales. This is specifically on new home sales. New home sales is more complicated, in my opinion, than existing home sales because it not only factors in the housing market, but it factors in the builders and builder profits and all of it that goes into that world. Builders are pricing homes not just according to the market, but also they will adjust how many homes they're building for profit. So, they're building less houses. There's less homes being built, but yet we know we're in a huge shortage that was created from, 2008's housing crisis and all the people that left the industry of building homes. But yet now they're talking about, the housing market being in a slump, specifically new home sales being in a slump, and that, but they don't really, focus on that builders don't want to increase supply too much because even with there being a shortage, the demand, there's a lot of buyer fatigue out there. How many of you are seeing that? Let me know in the comments. This is our section where I need you guys to participate. How many of you are seeing buyer fatigue? Buyers are just frustrated that payments are so high. We know that affordability is a problem, not rates and not prices, but together affordability. And I've talked about this before that we had rates that were super low. And when rates went higher, home prices were supposed to drop. The problem is home prices didn't drop. I feel like we are going into an environment. I want to know if you guys agree or disagree with this. We are going to start seeing a correction. I believe that 2025 and 2026, we're going to see home prices start coming down. You're going to have to deal with that objection with people that are buying a home. You're going to have to get good at having a conversation about, do you plan on buying a house for a year or 2 year? And 2 years or 3 years, and having this conversation that home prices will continue to go up. But what we're seeing now is the reaction and the hangover and the consequences of seeing prices that were driven up ridiculously when rates were low during the pandemic. And I feel like the Fed's hand was forced during the pandemic. Now, a couple of things, and I'm jumping around a little, forgive me, but I'm trying to stay on track here. Number one, we watch the Fed rate policy very, very closely. But it's important to note that this is still the Fed rate policy of the Fed funds rate really has a much bigger effect on short-term rates than long-term rates. Mortgages are long-term rates. Yes, they react to it and we do see movement and it's important. But at the same time, if the Fed cuts rates this year, even if they cut every meeting for the next meeting and cut rates down from 4.25 to 3.25, you would see mortgage rates go down, but they're going to go down 0.5 point. And that's not going to be enough to let off this pressure in the housing market. Randy's pointing out, already seeing strong seller concessions. Mike Brown points out, and guys, this is where I love y'all to be a part of it. So yeah, Randy says already seeing strong seller concessions, and that's going to continue. Everything's higher, rates, prices, insurance, taxes. Absolutely. All right. Mike said, absolutely agree. Just don't tell your realtors. And yeah, I mean, this is why I'm talking about it. This is going to be something that's a bit of an issue. Now, everybody wants to put it on the Fed that when the Fed cuts rates are going to drop. Look at where we're at, y'all. 6.79, 6.75. You're not going to see 5.5% rates. It doesn't matter how many times the Fed cuts. What you would see is it heats up the economy and drives up prices on everything else, which makes things even more unaffordable. That is Powell's argument. And again, I have a clip. I saved it off of I believe off of TikTok. The clip is specifically about Powell. I'll put it somewhere where you guys can see it. It's about Powell answering one of the senator questions. I think it was Senate, but either way, Congress's questions, and talking about the housing market. Now, if the Fed does cut rates, we like I just said, we already know there's 2 Fed rate cuts that are being priced in already. So how much would, even if the Fed were to cut, how much is it really going to drive down mortgage rates? And what I wanted to show you, this is the new Originator Success websites and the mortgage calculator on the website. And I wanted to go over this with y'all. And I wanted to show you specifically how much in your market, how many of you have houses that were $225,000 in your market? Maybe that was a low. Like, what is the lowest home prices in your market pre-COVID, right? Or during the beginning of COVID? I'm going to say when we had a normal housing market before things went up. I bought my house 2017 for about $400,000. What were the home prices in your market? I'm going to use a $225,000 house. Now, I need you guys to put this in the comments for me. What would you say a house that was $225,000 in 2019, 2020, what would you say that house is selling for today? If based on your market, even if you don't have those low prices, give me an idea, right? What do you say that a house that was selling for, quote unquote, worth 225,000, 2019, 2020, what is that house selling for today? Now in 2019, 2020, those rates were realistically, I mean, we were at like, I don't know, 4.5%, right? So we'll say 4.5%. So you were looking at a payment of just principal and interest. We're not doing pity, just principal and interest, $1,000. $25 is going up to at least $325 now, right? So if we take a look here at these, I don't know why that moved. Bump that. Holly, what market are you in? Holly says we aren't seeing many seller concessions at all. Some sellers aren't even paying buyers realtor fees. What market are you in? Very curious about that. So anyway, let's talk about 325. If that rate were to drop down to 5%, which it's not, right? But let's say 5%, $325,000 house, that's a principal and interest payment of $1,657. We take that same house, and again, this is what you're looking at. You're looking at a $600 plus or minus a $600 increase in payment for a low-end house. This is just going to go up from there, even if rates go back down to 5%. Now, let's say that this one was at 5%. So you've got a straight, dollar to dollar, like straight interest rate. We went from 1150 to 1650. So you're talking a $500 change in payment strictly on the price of the house. $500, almost a 50% increase, 150% total, right? That's basically what you're looking at here. Now, let's say that this 2.25 was at 7%. It's at 1422. That's still less than the 325 at 5%. So this is me talking to you. You're not going to teach this to other people. You're not going to get this through the head of consumers. You're not going to get this through the head of agents or whatever. We saw home prices because of the reaction. And you guys know how I feel about COVID. You know I'm not a big fan of how it was handled. The government broke the housing market, and we're paying for it now for years. It was a different situation than 2008, but it's no less devastating, and we're going to pay for it for another 10 years. All right. So the idea here is this home price at 225 at 7% interest is still $200 less expensive than what you would be now, even if rates went down to 5%. Rates are not the problem. Home prices are the problem. What was supposed to happen when rates came down is that home prices would go up. When rates came down so unrealistically because of the way that things were handled for COVID, and people getting out of the cities and moving, and the absolute crazy chaos of the housing market, home prices in many markets as much as doubled. My house right now at 400,000 would still sell tomorrow at 800,000. It's ridiculously expensive compared to what it was. I don't know that I would buy my house at 800,000, to be honest. I just can't wrap my head around paying prices today. We've talked about how there won't be a crash, and there can't be a crash because there's still too much demand. People need homes. However, there is going to be a correction. And it's going to be a painful correction. I'm going to say 10 to even 20% in some markets. So I think we're definitely going to see a big jump like this. And that's what the problem is. The problem was not rates. It's not the Fed. It's not Powell. The problem is home prices. And the market will correct itself. We're starting to see that happen. All right. That's what's going to happen. Now, the good news is that we should not see a crash. The reason we saw a crash in 2008 is people were unable to afford the homes that they were in because they had gotten in over their head. The people that are in homes today are fatigued, and we're going to see something similar because they're living on credit. However, the requirements to get a mortgage have been, much more stringent for a long time. So even as people start to fall behind on things, we're not going to have nearly the amount of people that are losing homes. The other reality is there's nowhere for them to go. You can't have a strategic default on a house today. There's nowhere to move to. There's no rental market. So all of those things are there. So Tiffany says each side, mortgage and housing, say it is due to the other. I listened to Lawrence Yun. Well, there's number one. There's your problem. Lawrence he's an idiot. He said it was due to mortgage rates. Yeah, because he's a realtor. He works for NAR. They're never going to say that home prices are over, or that house prices are too high. We can't even say it. We're saying the quiet part out loud right now. Home prices are too high. We know they're too high. It's definitely home prices. It's absolutely. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Do you guys think that this is due to home prices or due to rates? And I can put my math here. This is the math. You don't see a 4% appreciation on a $225,000 house is, 10% would be $22,000. 5% is $11,000. Let's say it's 11. So it's about $10,000. Seeing prices move $10,000 a year for 10 years to get to here instead of we did it in one. And that's the problem. Home prices are too high for wages and all the other expenses, along with inflation. All of that stuff happened, and we're going to pay for it. Home prices, I had said for many years, the last couple of years, there was no bubble. There isn't a bubble, but we are going to see home prices come down. Randy said we did major upgrades, flooring, paint, fencing, roofing. I'm looking to see where you said not buy even with the new barn and kitchen. Trying to see where you were coming off of that, Randy. So Charlie says majority of the buyers blame the rate, but you agree that it's the rise in home prices. Yeah, I mean, everyone blames the rate. First of all, don't get me started about the masses. I mean, you're looking at New York City, which the Democrats there have in the primary elected a Democratic socialist, which political feelings aside, what I find laughable is the guy is making promises that his position as mayor is totally unable to provide on. Things like taxing. Taxes are handled by the state legislature, not by the mayor. I mean, New York City is like the largest city probably in the United States, right? It's bigger than LA, but that may, but otherwise think of the mayor in your town, like raising the rates in your town. You have other, so anyway, my point is people vote for this because they don't understand, and the media feeds them this, and they read the same nonsense that's in the Wall Street Journal, and not even as good as in the Wall Street Journal. Most of the stuff that's on like CNBC and everything else, it's all crap. It's all garbage. So I'm going to wrap up in a minute, y'all. It's 10 o'clock. But anyway, you guys get my point. We're going to, I'm going to keep talking about this as we move forward. For the near term, though, it's important to note we're definitely floating. Rates are going to continue to improve a little bit, but it's not going to improve enough to bring, affordability to these payments. But we are going to see this. Take a look here. Look at the way that we have seen, Bill pointed out tax insurance, HOAs, high too. Exactly. We're raising the fees in our HOA this year because everything's more expensive to get done, just road maintenance and all that stuff. But take a look at this. We have a nice jump. Now, normally this would be a very concerning pattern when you see this large increase, because what goes up will come down. But even when we see it come down, we're going to see it come down and go back up. Right now, the big thing is the direction that things are going. It's the fundamentals. It's the fact that we feel like there's fatigue. Next week, we have jobs data. If there is any kind of labor market weakness in that jobs data, you're going to see this stuff improve. We're going to the July 15th CPI. And if that CPI does not go up significantly and show a lot of increase from tariffs, you're going to see a lot of pressure for the Fed to cut rates in July, and you're going to see this change big time. So we have the door open for rates to improve. 10-year Treasury yield, 4.26. Forgive me, I'm going to sneeze. Hi, George. You want to say hi? So anyway, that's where we're at, y'all. All good stuff for rates, but it's going to be a hard road. Rates are going to move down. They're not going to drop huge, but we're going to see rates move into the mid sixes and possibly even into the lower sixes like we saw last September. It's possible we could start to move in that direction, which is nice, but that's going to get people excited. That's going to get some people getting off the ground, but there's going to be a lot of concern about home prices and where this stuff goes. So keep that all in mind. Steve Lacefield says, "What's up, George?" He says, "What's up, George?" Curious George. So we got to get you adopted soon. Yeah, I know. Go ahead, go play. But all right, my friends. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Oh, thank you, Holly. And we'll wrap up tomorrow. Tomorrow we got the PCE inflation data. I don't think it's going to make any big shakeup. We know it's going to show inflation in a good spot because the CPI lets the cat out of the bag. So yes, it's a different index and it uses different variables, but it's still not going to be a big thing, but it could move things in the right direction. So markets are definitely leaning towards bonds improving. That's the momentum. Ride the trend, continue to float. There's no reason at all to be locking anything right now unless you have to lock to get it closed. Generally you want to be floating everything. I know there's a lot of originators that love to get loans and lock and take away risk. Don't do that in this market. You're doing your customers a disservice. You really are. I'm throwing it out there. And the people that watch me are probably not the people doing that, but the LOs that are just like, I'm too busy and I take a loan and I lock it and I move on and blah, blah, blah. No, do your job. Part of your job is to help them manage rate expectation, to know which direction we're going and why. And that's what I'm here to help you with. So anyway, my friends, hope you all have a fantastic day. And I will see you tomorrow. We'll talk all about what's going on then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.